My name is Joe, a 63-year-old who built a printing business from nothing but grit and determination. All I wanted was a simple text on my birthday, just a few words to know my son David and daughter Amber remembered. After decades of sacrifice, putting their education first, their homes, their dreams, I stared at my phone all day. Finally, I sent a short message. What came back shattered my world. "We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all." The pain was indescribable, but what happened next changed everything. Before I share this painful journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit subscribe if you've ever been hurt by the people you gave everything to. I promise, this story might just help you heal. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood on the south side of Chicago. My father worked at the steel mill, and my mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. We never had much, but they taught me the value of hard work and persistence. Those lessons served me well when I started my printing business at 22. I had nothing but a small loan from my uncle and one second-hand printing press in a tiny rented space near the industrial district. The early years were brutal. 18-hour days sleeping on a cot in the back room eating ramen noodles to save every penny. But slowly, job by job, client by client, I built a reputation for quality and reliability. By my late 20s, I had 3 employees and was turning a modest profit. That's when I met Margaret. She worked as an administrative assistant at an advertising agency that had become one of my regular clients. She was beautiful, ambitious, and had a warmth that drew me in immediately. Our first date was nothing fancy, just coffee at a diner near her office, but we talked for hours. 6 months later, I proposed, and to my amazement, she said yes. We married in a simple ceremony with close family and friends. Margaret believed in me and my business in a way no one else had. She helped with the books in the evenings, while keeping her day job, allowing us to save enough to expand. When she became pregnant with David 3 years into our marriage, it was the happiest day of my life. The day David was born changed everything for me. Holding my son, I made a silent promise that he would never know the financial struggles I had experienced. I doubled down on work, taking every job I could find, expanding our services and reinvesting profits. When Amber came along 3 years later, my drive only intensified. Looking back, this is where the seeds of future problems were planted. As the business grew, so did my absence at home. I missed David's first steps because I was meeting with a potential major client. I was late to Amber's preschool play because a printing job went wrong and needed my attention. Margaret picked up all the slack, becoming both mother and father most days. By the time David was 10 and Amber 7, the business had grown significantly. We had 20 employees, a much larger facility, and had expanded into digital printing services as the technology evolved. We moved from our starter home to a spacious house in a good neighborhood with excellent schools. From the outside, we were living the American dream. Inside, the cracks were beginning to show. Margaret's complaints about my absence became more frequent. "The kids need their father, not just his money," she would say. I promised to do better, and I meant it every time, but the demands of running a growing business always seemed to pull me back to work. There was always a crisis, always a deadline, always a reason why this time I couldn't make it home for dinner. We managed family vacations once a year, but even those were interrupted by business calls. I remember David's disappointed face when I had to fly home early from our trip to Disney World because a major client was threatening to pull their business. Amber cried, and Margaret just gave me that look, a mixture of disappointment and resignation that became increasingly familiar. Despite the tensions at home, I made sure my children had every advantage. Private schools with excellent academic programs, music lessons, sports teams, summer camps. When David showed interest in finance in high school, I arranged for him to meet with clients who worked in banking. When Amber decided she wanted to become a lawyer, I used business connections to set up shadowing opportunities. Both kids were bright and did well academically, getting accepted to prestigious universities. David went east to study economics and business, while Amber chose a school known for its pre-law program. Sending them off to college filled me with immense pride, even as it emptied our home and highlighted the growing distance between Margaret and me. The silent dinners and separate bedrooms couldn't be masked anymore once the children left. Margaret finally asked for a divorce during David's junior year of college. "I've given you 23 years, Joe. I've raised our children virtually alone while you built your empire. I have nothing left to give, and you have nothing left to give me," she said without anger, just a deep, resigned sadness. The divorce was finalized quickly. I didn't fight her requests, feeling I owed her at least that much. She got the house and a generous settlement. I moved into a downtown condo closer to the business. The kids were upset, but understanding, having witnessed the growing divide between us for years. What shocked me was how quickly Margaret moved on. Within 6 months, she was dating Howard Lancaster, a widowed real estate investor with significant holdings across the city. They married less than a year after our divorce was finalized. Howard was everything I wasn't, at least on the surface. Cultured, refined, present. He came from old money and moved in social circles I had never penetrated despite my business success. I tried to be happy for Margaret, but it hurt seeing social media posts of her and Howard at charity galas traveling through Europe, enjoying the life of leisure that I'd been working toward but never quite reached. Still, my focus remained on maintaining relationships with my adult children as they finished college and started their careers. David graduated with honors and landed a position at a prestigious investment bank. Amber finished her undergrad and went straight to law school. I couldn't have been prouder of both of them and made sure they knew it. I attended both graduation ceremonies, sitting awkwardly not far from Margaret and Howard, trying to keep the focus on celebrating my children's achievements. At first, our relationships remained strong despite the divorce. They called regularly, came for dinner at my place when they were in town, and seemed to value my advice as they navigated early adulthood. I thought we had weathered the storm of divorce remarkably well. I had no idea what was coming. As David established himself in investment banking, he met Eliza Thornton at a colleague's wedding. She came from an established Boston family with banking connections going back generations. She was poised, educated at the finest schools, and clearly had expectations about lifestyle that matched her upbringing. When David brought her to meet me at my downtown condo, I noticed how her eyes assessed everything, not with appreciation, but with measurement. "My father has a similar view from his office in the financial district," she commented, the comparison clearly not favorable to my modest home. I brushed it off, wanting to make a good impression for David's sake. When they announced their engagement 6 months later, I offered to help with the wedding costs, but was politely informed that Eliza's parents would be handling everything, as is tradition in their family. Around the same time, Amber was finishing law school and had met Thomas during a summer internship at a corporate law firm. Thomas was third-generation lawyer whose grandfather had founded the firm, where he was already assured a partner-track position. Like Eliza, he came from privilege with a family name that opened doors throughout the legal community. I attended both weddings feeling increasingly like an outsider. At David's wedding, I was seated at a table far from the main party with distant relatives of Eliza's family. At Amber's wedding, which I had actually contributed significantly to financially, despite not being acknowledged in any of the speeches, I overheard Thomas's mother asking someone, "And what exactly does Amber's father do again?" "Printing like business cards." Still, I was determined to be part of my children's lives. When David and Eliza announced they were expecting twins, I was ecstatic. I immediately offered financial help for the nursery, the best pediatricians, anything they needed. David accepted, though somewhat reluctantly. When Alex and Emma were born, I visited the hospital with armfuls of gifts and tears in my eyes. My grandchildren, my legacy. For the first couple of years, I saw the twins regularly. I baby-proofed my condo for their visits and filled a closet with toys and books. I treasured those Sunday afternoons when David would bring them over, even though Eliza rarely joined them, always having some social commitment she couldn't miss. But gradually, things began to change. The Sunday visits became monthly, then sporadic. David's excuses grew more elaborate, Eliza's social calendar apparently taking precedence. When I did see the twins, they were always impeccably dressed in designer children's clothing, already being taught the manners and expectations of their mother's social circle. Around this time, I noticed similar patterns with Amber. After her marriage to Thomas, our weekly lunch dates became less frequent. She started canceling at the last minute, citing work demands or obligations to Thomas's family. When we did meet, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, our conversations becoming increasingly superficial. 2 years ago, I made the decision to sell my business. The industry had changed dramatically, with digital media taking over much of the traditional printing market. I received an excellent offer from a larger corporation looking to acquire my client list and specialized equipment. At 60, I was ready for retirement with more than enough financial security to live comfortably and still leave significant inheritances to my children. I hoped retirement would give me more opportunities to reconnect with David and Amber, perhaps even become more involved in my grandchildren's lives. I bought a beautiful house in a prestigious neighborhood, thinking it might impress Eliza and make her more comfortable having the family over. I took cooking classes, learned about wine, bought a wardrobe that would fit in at the country club where David and Thomas both held memberships. All my efforts seemed to fall flat. The few times David and Eliza brought the twins to my new home, Eliza made comments about the new construction lacking character compared to their historic colonial. When I hosted a dinner party and invited both couples, Amber and Thomas arrived late and left early, while David spent most of the evening answering work emails on his phone. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but notice how comfortable both my children seemed with Howard. Margaret often posted family photos from their vacation home on the lake, everyone smiling broadly. Howard teaching the twins to fish, Amber helping Margaret in the kitchen, while Thomas and David relaxed on the deck. I was never invited to these family gatherings. My longtime friend and attorney Frank Miller noticed my growing depression during one of our monthly poker games. "They're using you for financial support while giving their time and affection to Howard," he observed bluntly after I'd had a couple of scotches and shared my frustrations. "And you're letting them." I defended my children instinctively, but Frank's words stuck with me. Was I simply a checkbook to them now? Had I been replaced so easily by Howard, who enjoyed the fruits of wealth without having had to build it from nothing as I had? These questions haunted me as I tried to maintain connections with my increasingly distant children. I joined the same golf club as David, hoping for occasional rounds together, but he always seemed to be playing with clients or colleagues when I visited. I offered to babysit the twins so David and Eliza could have weekend getaways, but they preferred using Eliza's parents or professional nannies. Amber became increasingly critical of my parenting during her childhood, making comments about how I was never there for her dance recitals or school plays. When I tried to apologize, acknowledging my workaholic tendencies had affected our family, she would say things like, "It's too late for that now, Dad. I needed a father then, not your guilt now." The final straw came during Christmas celebrations 6 months ago. I was invited to David and Eliza's home for Christmas Eve dinner, arriving with arms full of carefully selected gifts. The house was filled with guests, mostly Eliza's family and their social circle. I felt immediately out of place despite my expensive new sweater and the rare wine I'd brought as a hostess gift. During dinner, seated again at the far end of the table, I overheard Eliza talking to her cousin. "It's always awkward with new money," she said, not bothering to lower her voice. "They try so hard with the right clothes and the right address, but you can always tell." She glanced in my direction, then both women laughed softly. I looked to David seated near them, waiting for him to defend me. Instead, he smoothly changed the subject, asking about someone's recent trip to Aspen. That moment crystallized everything. My son, who I had sacrificed so much for, was embarrassed by me, his self-made father. Later that evening, I overheard David and Amber talking in the kitchen as I was looking for the bathroom. "Howard's taking everyone to his place in Vail for President's Day weekend," Amber was saying. "Mom says he's not feeling great lately, might be serious. We should spend as much time with him as we can." "Definitely," David replied. "Besides, the twins love him. He's so much better at the grandfather thing than Dad ever could be." I slipped away before they noticed me, my heart heavy with the realization that I had truly been replaced in their lives. Howard was now their father figure, the grandfather to my grandchildren, while I was relegated to the role of awkward relative who didn't quite fit in. As my birthday approached 3 months later, I still held out hope for some acknowledgement from my children. Perhaps a family dinner, or at least phone calls. I sent both of them texts a week before mentioning that I was looking forward to hearing from them on my special day. Amber replied with a vague "sure, Dad," while David didn't respond at all. Still, I remained optimistic, preparing a nice dinner for myself at home just in case they surprised me with a visit. I even bought a small cake from my favorite bakery, enough for 4 if they did come by. The day of my 63rd birthday dawned bright and clear. I checked my phone first thing, finding no messages. I told myself it was early, they would reach out later. I busied myself with yard work, checking my phone obsessively throughout the morning. Nothing. By afternoon, the silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, not even perfunctory social media posts wishing me happy birthday. As evening approached, I sat alone at my dining table, the untouched cake in the center, a single candle unlit. After a glass of wine, I gathered my courage and sent a simple text to both children. "Missing you all today on my birthday. Would love to hear from you when you have a moment." Then I waited, phone in hand, for any response at all. 3 hours passed after I sent my birthday text. 3 hours of checking my phone every few minutes, of jumping at any notification sound, of increasingly desperate hope fading to anxiety. As each hour ticked by, I tried to make excuses for their silence. They were busy with work, they had family obligations, they were planning a surprise. At 9:15 that evening, my phone finally chimed with a message. My heart leapt as I saw David's name on the screen. Then I read his words, and my world collapsed. "Dad, we've been meaning to talk to you. We need space from you. Please don't reach out anymore at all. This isn't working for any of us." I stared at the message, reading it over and over, unable to comprehend the cold finality of it. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. My chest tightened painfully, and for a moment I wondered if I was having a heart attack. The physical pain of rejection was that intense. In a panic, I tried calling David. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a confused, emotional message begging for an explanation. I tried again and again, each call rolling to voicemail immediately. He had blocked me. With increasing desperation, I called Amber. Same result, straight to voicemail. I texted her instead. "Amber, please. What's happening? Why is David asking me not to contact you both? It's my birthday, for God's sake." After 10 excruciating minutes, her reply came through. "Dad, we agree with what David said. This is what's best for everyone. Please respect our wishes." I sat at my dining table, birthday cake still untouched, trying to make sense of what was happening. How could my own children cut me off completely without warning, without explanation on my birthday of all days? What had I done to deserve such cruelty? I spent the night pacing through my empty house, stopping to look at family photos still displayed on walls and shelves. David's high school graduation, Amber in her law school cap and gown, the twins as newborns in my arms. Each image was a knife twist of fresh pain. I replayed every interaction from the past year, searching for clues I might have missed. Had I said something offensive? Had I crossed boundaries unknowingly? I couldn't find any incident severe enough to warrant this complete rejection. By morning, exhausted and hollow-eyed, a different kind of clarity began to emerge. I remembered the conversation I'd overheard between my children at Christmas about Howard not feeling well. I recalled David's increasing questions about my retirement finances in recent months, always casual but persistent. "Just want to make sure you're taking care of Dad," he would say. The pieces started fitting together in a sickening pattern. Howard, their surrogate father and grandfather, might be seriously ill. If he passed away, his substantial wealth would likely go to Margaret, not necessarily to my children. But my retirement assets and property would eventually be their inheritance. Was it possible? Could they be that calculating, that cold? The thought was almost too painful to bear that my children would reject me emotionally while positioning themselves for financial gain. Yet as the sun rose on the day after my birthday, I couldn't escape the conclusion that fit all the evidence. The hurt that had kept me awake all night began hardening into something different. Something I had rarely allowed myself to feel toward my children. Anger, and beneath it, resolve. I sat at my kitchen table the morning after my birthday, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of me as sunlight gradually filled the room. The house was silent, except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator, a sound that only emphasized my solitude. On the table beside my phone, which had remained silent since Amber's last text, was a folder containing my will and estate planning documents. I had updated them after selling my business 3 years ago, carefully dividing my assets between David and Amber with trust funds established for the twins. Everything I had built over decades of hard work would eventually go to the children who had just told me they wanted nothing to do with me. As I leafed through the legal papers, memories cascaded through my mind. Working through weekends to afford David's braces, taking a second mortgage on our first house to pay for Amber's private school when she was struggling in the public system. The crushing weight of responsibility I felt ensuring they had advantages I never did. All those years I missed family dinners and bedtime stories because I was building something for them, something that would last beyond me. And now, when the business was sold and I finally had time to be present, they wanted me gone even as they positioned themselves for the wealth I had created. A strange calm settled over me, replacing the raw pain of the night before. I reached for my phone and called Frank, my attorney and oldest friend. "I need to see you today," I said when he answered. "It's urgent." Frank, hearing the strain in my voice, cleared his morning schedule. 2 hours later, I was sitting in his office overlooking the Chicago skyline, the same view I had seen hundreds of times over our 40-year friendship. This time, everything felt different. "They've cut me off completely, Frank. On my birthday, for God's sake," I said, showing him the text messages. Frank read them silently, his expression darkening. "Jesus, Joe, that's cold." I told him about the previous months, the gradual distancing, the overheard conversations about Howard's health, David's increased interest in my financial affairs. As I spoke, the emotions I had been holding back burst through, and to my horror, I began to sob in my friend's office, something I hadn't done since Margaret asked for divorce. Frank moved from behind his desk and put a hand on my shoulder, waiting patiently while I struggled to regain composure. When I finally looked up, wiping my eyes with embarrassment, I saw not pity in his face but anger on my behalf. "Those ungrateful little—" he started, then stopped himself. "Joe, I've watched you sacrifice everything for those kids for decades. This is beyond unacceptable." "What do I do, Frank?" I asked, feeling completely lost. "How do you come back from your children telling you they don't want you in their lives?" Frank was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. "You know, Joe, I've been handling estates for 35 years. I've seen what happens when wealth is given without appreciation. It rarely ends well for anyone." He pulled out a file from his cabinet. "Last year, I helped set up the scholarship foundation for Bill Rodriguez after his kids went down a similar path. He's funding education for underprivileged kids in the neighborhood where he grew up. Says it's the most rewarding thing he's ever done." The mention of Bill, another self-made businessman, sparked something in me. I had grown up with nothing, worked my way up from poverty. What if my money could help others do the same? "Show me what that looks like," I said. For the next 3 hours, Frank outlined possibilities. We discussed revising my will, removing David and Amber as primary beneficiaries. We talked about setting up a foundation to help first-generation business owners from disadvantaged backgrounds, providing grants and mentorship. We explored creating more modest trust funds for the twins that would only be accessible for education, and after they turned 25, bypassing their parents' control. With each option, we discussed the fog of despair lifted slightly. By early afternoon, a plan was taking shape, one that honored my life's work in a way that felt right. "Are you sure about this, Joe?" Frank asked as he prepared the documents. "It's a big change, once they find out." "They told me not to contact them," I said, a new strength in my voice. "I'm just respecting their wishes and making my own decisions about my life and what I've built." The legal process took several days. I met with financial advisors, signed endless documents, established the framework for the Joe Williams First Generation Business Foundation. I designated a small portion of my estate for my grandchildren's education, but the bulk of my assets would now go to helping young entrepreneurs who, like me, were starting with nothing but determination. When I finally signed the last document in Frank's office with witnesses and a notary present, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since those devastating birthday texts, I slept through the night without waking to reread their cruel words. The next morning, I woke to sunlight and silence, but the silence no longer felt accusatory. I had taken back control of my life and my legacy. Whatever happened next would be on my terms, not theirs. A week passed after I changed my will. I threw myself into volunteer work at the local business development center, mentoring young entrepreneurs. There was something healing about sharing the knowledge I'd gained over decades with people who truly valued it. Their eager questions and genuine gratitude were balm to my wounded spirit. I also began seeing a therapist, something I would have dismissed as unnecessary in the past. Dr. Kathleen Rivera specialized in family estrangement, and our sessions helped me process both the grief of losing my children and the anger at their betrayal. "Setting boundaries isn't punishment," she reminded me. "It's self-care." The following Thursday morning, I was enjoying coffee on my patio when the doorbell rang. Opening the front door, I found myself face to face with David, something I hadn't expected after his text ordering me not to contact him. "Dad," he said with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes, "can I come in?" I stepped aside silently, noting his expensive suit and the luxury car in my driveway. He looked around the house with an appraising eye as I led him to the living room. "Coffee?" I offered, my voice neutral. "Sure," he replied, settling onto my sofa, as if nothing had happened between us. I prepared his coffee the way he liked it, buying myself time to calm my racing heart. When I returned to the living room, David was examining a photo of the twins on my mantel. "They've grown so much," I said, setting his cup down. "I miss them." David had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable before launching into small talk about the weather, his job, trivial matters that studiously avoided any mention of his cruel text or my birthday. Finally, I interrupted him. "David, why are you here? Your message was pretty clear about not wanting contact." He shifted awkwardly. "About that, I think I was a bit hasty. Things have been stressful lately." "What things exactly?" I pressed. David sighed, rubbing his neck. Well, actually, there's been some family news. Howard isn't doing well. Cancer, terminal, they're saying. I nodded slowly, waiting. It's been hard on Mom, of course. And on all of us. The thing is, he continued, leaning forward, it's made me think about family, about what's important. I see, I said, though what I saw wasn't what he was pretending to offer. Anyway, David continued, his voice shifting to a tone I recognized from his business calls. I was talking with Amber, and we realized we should check in on you too. Make sure your affairs are in order. These situations make you think about the future, you know. And there it was, the real purpose of this sudden reconciliation attempt. Not concern for me, but concern for what would happen to my money. Actually, I said carefully, I've been doing some financial restructuring recently. David's expression sharpened with immediate interest. Oh, what kind of restructuring? Estate planning primarily. Met with Frank several times last week. Frank Miller, your attorney. David sat up straighter. Anything I should know about? I deliberately kept my answer vague. Just making sure everything's arranged properly. Frank suggested some updates given current tax laws. David nodded, trying to appear casual. Smart. Always good to stay current. I could help review things if you want. My firm has excellent estate planners. I trust Frank, I said simply. He's handled my affairs for 40 years. The conversation continued, with David making increasingly direct inquiries about my financial plans, thinly veiled as concern for my well-being. I answered non-committally, allowing him to draw his own conclusions, which I suspected were far from the truth. As he was leaving, he surprised me with an invitation. We're having a small dinner next weekend. Why don't you join us? The twins have been asking about you. The mention of my grandchildren tugged at my heart, but I remembered Dr. Rivera's words about healthy boundaries. I'll think about it, I said, not committing. That evening, Amber called. After months of ignored texts and declined invitations, suddenly my daughter was checking in, her voice warm with concern that rang hollow after the birthday rejection. David mentioned you've been doing some estate planning, she said after a few minutes of superficial conversation. Did he? I replied. I think it's great you're being proactive, she continued. Thomas always says it's important to have these things in order. His grandfather left things unspecified, and it caused so many problems for the family. I made a non-committal sound, neither confirming nor denying anything. Anyway, she continued brightly, we'd love to have you over soon. It's been too long. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet house, marveling at the transparency of their sudden interest. The same children who had explicitly asked me to disappear from their lives were now falling over themselves to reconnect, all because they feared their inheritance might be in jeopardy. Even more surprising was the call I received from Margaret the next day. My ex-wife rarely contacted me directly, usually communicating through the children if necessary. Joe, she said when I answered, I think we need to talk. We met at a quiet cafe midway between our homes. Margaret looking elegant as always, but tired, the strain of Howard's illness evident in the new lines around her eyes. David told me they've been in touch with you, she said after we'd ordered coffee. He seemed concerned about changes you might be making to your will. I raised an eyebrow. Is that why you wanted to meet to discuss my will? Margaret had the decency to look embarrassed. No, actually, I wanted to apologize. For what? For the way the kids have been treating you, she said quietly. I've noticed it for years, but I didn't say anything. Maybe I even encouraged it by allowing Howard to take on such a big role in their lives. I stared at her, surprised by this unexpected honesty. They've changed Joe, she continued. Both of them. The money, the social climbing, the constant desire for more. That's not how we raised them. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. When David told me what they did on your birthday, I was ashamed. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because Howard's dying, she said simply. And I've seen how quickly David and Amber have started positioning themselves for inheritance. It's opened my eyes to what they've become. We talked for over an hour, our longest civil conversation in years. Margaret admitted that her perfect life with Howard had its own problems, that his children from his first marriage were just as materialistic and calculating as ours had become. We shared regrets about our parenting, wondering where we had gone wrong despite our best intentions. As we prepared to leave, Margaret touched my arm gently. Whatever you're planning to do with your estate, Joe, I support it. They need to learn that family isn't about what they can get from you. Her words stayed with me as I drove home, bringing unexpected comfort. At least, someone who had known me most of my adult life understood my pain and validated my response to it. Over the next weeks, I declined David's dinner invitation and Amber's increasingly frequent calls. Instead, I focused on building a new life for myself. I joined a business mentorship program working with young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Many reminded me of myself at their age, hungry for opportunity and willing to work for it. For the first time in months, I found myself looking forward to each day rather than dreading the silence of my phone. I had purpose again, not defined by my role as father or provider, but by the value I could bring to others through sharing my experience. And in this new chapter, I discovered an unexpected peace in accepting the truth about my children, however painful. They had shown me who they truly were, and while I would always love them, I no longer needed their approval or affection to validate my worth. 3 months passed since that fateful birthday text. The Chicago summer was in full bloom, parks filled with families enjoying the sunshine, a painful reminder of what I had lost. Yet surprisingly, I found myself in a better place emotionally than I had been in years. The initial devastation had given way to a quiet resilience I hadn't known I possessed. My days had developed a fulfilling rhythm. Mornings at the community business center, mentoring young entrepreneurs. Afternoons working with Frank and a team of advisors on establishing my foundation. Evenings taking cooking classes or attending community events, gradually building a social circle separate from my family connections. It was at one of these cooking classes that I met Sandra Winters, a widow in her late 50s, with a warm laugh and no-nonsense attitude. She had lost her husband to a heart attack 5 years earlier and had similarly difficult experiences with adult children. My daughter expected to move into our family home after Richard died, she told me over coffee after class one evening. When I decided to keep it and live my own life instead, she didn't speak to me for months, as if my only value was in what I could give her. Our shared experiences created an immediate bond, and soon we were meeting regularly outside of class. Sandra became my companion at community events, my sounding board when dealing with continued manipulation attempts from my children, and eventually a source of joy I hadn't expected to find again. As Sandra and I grew closer, David and Amber's efforts to reconnect intensified. David began sending photos of the twins accompanied by messages suggesting they missed their grandfather. Amber suddenly remembered professional networking opportunities that might be perfect for my skill set, invitations transparent in their attempt to assess my financial plans. I maintained polite but distant responses, no longer swayed by the emotional manipulation that would have devastated me months earlier. Dr. Rivera had helped me see these tactics clearly and develop strategies to protect my boundaries while leaving the door open for genuine reconciliation, should it ever come. As Christmas approached, David extended an invitation to their home for Christmas Eve dinner. "The whole family will be there," he wrote. "It would mean a lot to the twins." After careful consideration and consultation with both Sandra and Dr. Rivera, I declined. Instead, I invited the 5 promising students from my mentorship program, all first-generation college graduates working to start businesses, to a holiday meal at my home. Sandra offered to help host, and together we prepared a feast, celebrating their achievements and plans for the coming year. The evening was in full swing, my living room filled with laughter and animated discussions about business strategies, when the doorbell rang. Opening it, I found David and Amber standing on my porch looking surprised at the sounds of celebration coming from inside. "Dad," David said, confusion evident in his voice, "we thought you might be alone since you didn't come to our place." Before I could respond, Amber peered past me at the gathering inside. "Are you having a party? Who are all these people?" "Friends," I said simply. "Would you like to come in?" They entered hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable as I introduced them to my students and to Sandra. The contrast between their designer holiday outfits and the casual warmth of my gathered guests seemed to heighten their discomfort. After awkward small talk, David gestured toward my study. "Could we talk privately for a minute, Dad?" I nodded, excusing myself from the group. In my study, David and Amber exchanged glances before David spoke. "What's going on, Dad? Who are these people? And who is Sandra exactly?" I leaned against my desk, studying my children's faces. "These are students I mentor through the business development program. Sandra is a friend who has become very important to me." "You never mentioned any of this," Amber said, a note of accusation in her voice. "When would I have mentioned it?" I asked quietly. "The last direct communication I had from either of you was a text telling me not to contact you anymore," on my birthday. They had the grace to look uncomfortable. David cleared his throat. About that. It was a difficult time. We didn't really mean it the way it sounded. How exactly does "don't reach out anymore" at all have another interpretation? I asked. Amber jumped in. We were dealing with Howard's diagnosis. It was emotional for everyone. So emotional that you couldn't send a simple happy birthday message to your father. I kept my voice level, determined not to show how deeply they had hurt me. Look, we're trying to move past that, David said, an edge of impatience creeping into his voice. The point is, we're here now. We want to be family again. Why? I asked simply. The question seemed to catch them off guard. What do you mean, why? Because you're our father, Amber replied. And that meant nothing 3 months ago, I pointed out. What's changed? They exchanged another glance, the kind of silent communication that told me they had discussed this conversation in advance. Nothing's changed, David said carefully. We've just had time to reflect on what's important. I nodded slowly, then decided it was time for complete honesty. I've made some changes in my life since your text, David. One of those changes involves my estate planning. Their expression sharpened instantly, confirming what I had suspected about the true motivation for their sudden desire to reconcile. I've established a foundation to help young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, I continued. Most of my assets will fund that work after I'm gone. I've set aside money for Alex and Emma's education, but that's all. The shock on their faces would have been comical under different circumstances. You're disinheriting us, Amber asked, voice rising, because of one text message. No, I said calmly. I'm choosing to use what I've built to help others who value it. You made it clear you don't want me in your lives. I'm respecting that choice and making my own about my legacy. David's face flushed with anger. You can't do this. We're your children. Yes, you are, I agreed. And I'll always love you both. My door is open if you ever want a real relationship, one not based on what I can give you financially. But I won't be manipulated or used anymore. The argument that followed was painful but clarifying. Their masks slipped, completely revealing the entitled, calculating people they had become. When David finally resorted to threats about contesting the will, I calmly informed him that Frank had ensured everything was legally sound. You asked for space, I reminded them as they prepared to storm out. I'm giving it to you along with the freedom to build your own success, just like I had to. After they left, I rejoined my gathering where Sandra gently squeezed my hand in silent support. The evening continued with genuine warmth and connection, the kind I had been seeking from my children for years. The following weeks brought angry emails and even a consultation with a lawyer on their part, but Frank had indeed made everything ironclad. Eventually, the communication tapered off to silence again, but this time the silence didn't devastate me. I had built a new life with meaning and purpose. A year later, on my 64th birthday, I hosted a celebration at my home. Sandra, now officially my partner, helped organize a gathering of friends from my mentorship program and community activities. My foundation had made its first grants to young entrepreneurs, and several attended to share their progress. As the party was winding down, my phone chimed with a text message. Opening it, I found a simple message from Amber. Happy birthday, Dad. I'm sorry. Can we talk someday? I showed the message to Sandra, who smiled encouragingly. Progress, she said. Later that evening, I replied to Amber with equal simplicity. Thank you. Yes, we can talk when you're ready. I had no illusions about instant reconciliation or complete healing of the damage done. But I had learned that standing up for yourself doesn't mean closing your heart completely. It means establishing healthy boundaries that must be respected before trust can be rebuilt. The journey from that devastating birthday text to where I stood now had been painful but transformative. I had lost the family I thought I had, but gained clarity about what real family means. It isn't about obligation or inheritance or keeping up appearances. It's about mutual respect, genuine care, and showing up for each other without conditions. As I look at my life now, filled with meaningful work, honest relationships, and the knowledge that my legacy will help others build their dreams, I can't help but feel grateful for the harsh wake-up call that text message provided. Sometimes we need to lose what we thought we wanted to discover what we truly need. Have you ever had to make difficult choices about family relationships? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps me continue sharing these life lessons with others who might be struggling with similar challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, it's never too late to redefine what family means to you and create the life you truly deserve.